10. Puppophobia. If you happen to have puppophobia, then FNAF 2 is going to be hell. With the mechanic added of winding the music box, you will constantly have to keep looking at your worst fear. Puppophobia, as I'm sure you can tell, is the fear of puppets. And considering how there is also a minigame revolving around the puppet jump scare, I'm sure you can see why FNAF would trigger this fairly common phobia. The main triggers, of course, being the puppet, or perhaps even the mini arenas from Sister Location. I mean, they're essentially just smaller versions of the puppet, but with tutus, so I mean, like, it's not that much of a stretch. And don't even get me started on how bad Night Marionette from the FNAF 4 Halloween expansion would be. While yes, puppets would be scary, a puppet intentionally designed to kill you using the exact same mechanics as Nightmare, by far the scariest animatronic from that game, well, you'll just be screwed at that point, won't you? And at 9, chromophobia. Chromophobia is the fear of colors, and while yes, colors are everywhere, they're very present in the FNAF series. I mean, there was a whole debate based on if purple guy and pink guy were the same person. Plus, text colors end up becoming very important later on, indicating to us who is speaking, and not to mention the things that are literally coming at you are colorful as well. Unless you play Night 5 of FNAF 1 in Help Wanted, which does make everything black and white. Colors ended up becoming such an important part of the game, people were legit fighting over it. People became indicated by their color. Purple guy, mustard man, hell, we even figured out that Elizabeth Afton possessed Baby by the shift in eye color, since Baby's eyes were blue, but switched to green when Elizabeth takes over because her eyes were green. Color became so important it would surely terrify anyone with chromophobia. And you won't have to worry about that for me because I'm pasty as hell. And at 8, electorophobia. Some people say Chica is sexy, and I mean, y'all can like whatever you wanna like, even if it is highly disturbing, but the fact that there is a legit main character based on a chicken doesn't help those with electorophobia, which is the fear of chickens. Unless people are able to convince themselves that she is a duck, supposedly also a fear that a duck is always watching you. Kentucky will no doubt be the scariest part of this game franchise. I honestly don't know if Nightmare Chica would be any better or worse in this scenario. I mean, she does indeed look like a chicken, but she is specifically designed to be more nightmarish than the others, so only those with this phobia could really know. And if you have this fear, please tell me in the comments which version of Chica is scarier. And is Mermaid Chica scary to you? Because it's technically a mermaid, but it's also a chicken. I don't know the rules with this sort of thing. At 7, cacophobia. Unless you are instantly a pro at power management and strategy, you will fail at least one of these nights. Whether it's due to your power running out or you forgetting to check Foxy, the animatronics will get you at least once in any given playthrough. While the whole build up to your inevitable demise is crazy and definitely one of the scarier parts of the games, the jump scare when you least expect it is the worst. However, if you have cacophobia, the fear of failing, you'll be even more terrified before and after the fact. The fear of failing can manifest in multiple different ways, usually associated with an attempt to get someone's approval but never succeeding. However, it ends up putting a real strain on your life, and that while yes, we all want to succeed, failing is okay because we won't collapse to the ground or have a panic attack because of it, unless it's a jump scare from that damn Reaper puppet, because I can't handle that. At 6, chlorophobia. While Sister Location may be best for those with a fear of chickens, since Chica isn't present, those with chlorophobia will end up hating themselves for playing. Chlorophobia is the crippling fear of clowns, much like the fear that Sam Winchester and his linebacker shoulders has. With the whole Sister Location crew basically being clowns, I'm sure anyone who loaded this game would actually beg for the sweet merciful release of death. Not in game, obviously, because that involves getting jump scared by a clown. And even Ennard, who is in my opinion one of the creepiest animatronics now, who only has a clown face, would still scare the pants off anyone who decides to play Sister Location because it was the start of a new story, if you consider the fact that FNAF 4 was described as the final chapter of the original story. We're doing number 5, scopophobia. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you? Maybe you caught someone's gaze on the bus, or you think that the bathroom mirror is more than it seems. Well, how about having scopophobia, fear of being stared at? If you are brought to your knees by a slightly longer look than normal, you probably are going to hate the fact that literally all these characters do is stare at you. They stare at you through the camera, they stare at the camera while right next to it, they also stare into your soul just from the outskirts of your office. Whether it be from the door or a window that you aren't able to close. Anyone scared of being stared at will surely get their money's worth of scares from any FNAF game. And at 4, zoophobia. You thought Zootopia was a clever name because all the animals were living in a utopia? Well, it could have been a pun referring to the irrational fear of animals known as zoophobia, since in the movie all animals are afraid of the predators being feral again or whatever. I saw part of it. once. Well, almost every single animatronic having anything to do with these Five Nights at Freddy series, with the exception of a few from Sister Location and FNAF 2, are anthropomorphized versions of animals. Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, Freddy Fazbear, Foxy, it's right in the name, Mangles, just another version of Foxy, Springtrap is a golden bunny, Dreadbear is just a Frankenstein bear. Almost every individual animatronic has some form of animalistic feature about them, and to anyone with zoophobia, that is one hell of a nope. Plus, the nightmare forms of these animatronics can be even worse, especially when in FNAF 4 you need to get really close to Foxy to send it away. And in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, you need to deal with all the Nightmare main cast in the hallway minigame, where you need to directly confront them since you need to make as much progress as you can quickly. And don't even get me started on how bad the corn maze or dark rooms must be with Nightmare Fredbear, man. Oh. And 3, pyrophobia. Look, I literally have the opposite of this fear because I love fire, but those with pyrophobia are terrified of fire. I mean, fire is a fair fear, considering how it can destroy everything, and if left uncontrolled it will ruin the universe and everything in it. Kinda like FNAF. But in all honesty, while fire may not be directly in the game, if you play Pizzeria Simulator or hell even FNAF 3, this fear will be triggered. Considering how at the end of both of these games, the establishment you work at goes up in flames in an attempt to destroy the remnant that contains the souls of the damned. It also doesn't help that in FNAF 6 you actually are in the room that's burning, as indicated by the temperature going up in the office, getting higher and higher as Henry does his final monologue while wishing the souls of the children peace, as well as damning William to hell because, let's be honest, he deserved it. Even if there is that one kid that everyone would like out of the picture, whether it be the other child of your estranged father, the child of the woman you're looking to be with, or Braith from Skyrim, because let's face it, if she was the one who possessed Golden Freddy, William would have been sent to the heavens, and this whole the one you should not have killed thing wouldn't have started. I hate Braith. Also, note to my FBI agent, I don't actually plan on killing any kids, but if I did, they would probably deserve it. It's probably a brony. And 2, necrophobia. Phobia. Okay, I'm saying necrophobia, as in fear of death or dead things. And considering how this series is piled high with underage corpses and death analogies like no other series, if you're scared of death or the concept of it, you're probably in for one wild ride. With representations of death like Nightmare and Nightmarionette, plus the literal addition of a new dead kid every game, death is everywhere in the Five Nights at Freddy series, and if you were to play the FNAF VR version, you would end up getting killed up close, or even end up seeing graves. When you get over in the game's DLC, you will drop one in your pants faster than me figuring out that I need to look at Bonnie's left, not mine. Yes, it happened, and I even said that I realized it in the text in the video. I was like, yeah, I figured out that it was the wrong eye. But you guys were still commenting about it like I didn't know in the comments, and there was that one person who was very rude about it. And I didn't realize people would be so mad about it. Like, come on, I found it hilarious after the fact. I think y'all just need to chill. Take a pill, watch people fail, and laugh about it. No need to spread rude comments about how stupid I am. I know I'm stupid, it's part of my charm. Finally, in at number 1, automatophobia. This is literally the phobia this game was made for. Sure, it wasn't actually the reason it was made, but seriously, this is the perfect fear for these games. While sure, the thought of mannequins can creep anyone out, especially if you're being brought to life in a cheesy movie where they fall in love with the main protagonist and everyone judges him for it. But the fact that automatophobia is literally the fear of animatronics is surely the bread and butter of this series. Well, it's more of a fear of human-like figures like wax figures and mannequins, as I mentioned, or things like that, but animatronics that are anthropomorphized versions of animals is surely enough to trigger this phobia, especially when they're trying to fricking kill you. Plus, I looked it up and the fear of animatronics really started shooting up in August of 2014, when the first FNAF game was released, along with searches for animatronics and ways to stop being scared of animatronics. So these games even made people afraid of animatronics when they weren't before, or at least they didn't know it or acknowledged it beforehand. Gotta hand it to Scott, he did a very good job. I, for one, can never look Chuck E. Cheese in the eyes again.
Number 10, Aticophobia. As with most adventure games, it is possible for you to fail in the game. Most often this will happen in the form of failed Pokemon battles. It is possible for you to lose a battle in the game, and you don't even necessarily get to just try that battle again. Instead, you will faint and wake up with your Pokemon in a Poke Center. If you are afraid of losing or failing at something, the idea that this could happen to you could frighten you to the point that you could become unable to face Pokemon battles, or play the game at all. Number 9, Monophobia. Monophobia. Monophobia is one of the terms used to describe the fear of loneliness. Because in the original game, much of your adventure happens alone. This fear is one that could come up for you, as you realize you don't want to go into that cave or forest alone. Granted, you do interact with people in cities, towns, and villages in between your solo travels, and sometimes you do even run into people out in the wilderness, but most of the game is based around the idea of a solo adventure, and it's this prospect that could trigger monophobia for you. Number 8. Nosocomophobia. Nosocomophobia is the fear of hospitals. As there are many Poke Centers that you visit in the game to treat injured Pokemon, these centers resembling hospitals could trigger this fear. For many, Nurse Joy has always appeared to be a helpful and kind soul, but for those who fear hospitals or medical professionals, Nurse Joy could seem terrifying, even though all she likely wants to do is to help heal you and your Pokemon. This fear could prevent you from getting the care that you need for your injured Pokemon, or discourage you from fighting at all, which is kind of the main focus of the game. Number 7. Xylophobia. No, this is not a fear of xylophones. Xylophobia is a fear of wooded areas, the wilderness, and woodland creatures. Forests tend to be a big part of this game, with the Viridian Forest being one of the main locations that you explore. It's very possible that this fear could be triggered for you, especially as you also have to face tons of woodland Pokemon while in the forest. And there are also a lot of Pokemon in the game that are inspired by woodland creatures, like Sentret, Ursaring, and Lycanroc. Number 6. Nyctophobia. Nyctophobia is a fear of the dark. There are many areas in the Pokemon games that if you don't have a light will end up triggering this fear. Not all caves in the games have required flash, but some of the more classic Pokemon titles have caves that you can't even navigate without flash, being completely dark and unable to see. Those with a paralyzing fear of the dark might even be too afraid to go near these caves at all, even when armed with flash. Number 5. Sociophobia. Contrary to a fear of being alone, if you are afraid of interacting with people, then the Pokemon games will probably still give you plenty of opportunities for this phobia to be triggered. Sociophobia is a fear of people or of social interactions. Those who especially fear conflict or confrontation within a social situation will likely be triggered by the idea of Pokemon battles, which are usually instigated by another person in the game, a rival trainer or a gym leader. Although your Pokemon are the ones fighting each other, you are still very much involved in the instigation by deciding what Pokemon and what attacks to use in the fight. Number 4. Entomophobia. Pokemon are based off of many different kinds of creatures. They also have many different types. Bug is one of those types, and there are many different insectoid-looking Pokemon in the game. Those who suffer from a fear of bugs, known as entomophobia, might find themselves triggered by some of these Pokemon, like Heracross, Pinsir, Caterpie, Wurmple, Weedle, and Spinarak. Number 3. Phasmophobia. Another type of Pokemon popular in the game is Ghost type. There are many different kinds of paranormal aspects woven into the stories belonging to the Pokemon world, including ghostly ones. Those who fear the paranormal and the undead will likely find themselves spooked by these elements. Pokemon such as Ghastly, Gengar, Duskull, and Misdreavus will surely send a chill up your spine if you find yourself afraid of ghosts. Duskull especially is super creepy as its design is inspired by the Grim Reaper, Death Incarnate itself. And Ghost-type Pokemon, as well as certain areas and quests in the game, will likely become things that you'll want to avoid while playing. Number 2. Mazeophobia. Like it sounds, this is the fear of getting lost. Sometimes in a maze, sometimes not. This fear could easily be triggered in the Pokemon games as there are many dark caves and tunnels. There are lots of opportunities to get lost in this game, including other locations as well, but really the multi-level caves are the worst of them. Getting lost in the caves can be both frustrating and terrifying if you find yourself focusing on the fact, well, that you may never escape. This fear also might cause you to avoid caves or the game altogether if triggered. Number 1. Claustrophobia. If a Pokemon could fit in a Pokeball, is it possible for people to also get trapped in there? Now, if you have a fear of closed spaces and being trapped, then the idea of Pokeballs could really freak you out, even if you aren't afraid of getting trapped in there yourself. You might just be worried about your Pokemon being in there. Sure, they apparently are cool with being in Pokeballs, but what about Pikachu? He never liked it, so how do we know that all Pokemon are really fine with it? Maybe it's actually a terrible experience for them and we just don't know about it. And if Ash's Pikachu just was unique in his fear of being inside Pokeballs or his dislike of it, then how do we know there might not be other Pokemon who also share this fear?
And at number 10, yellow. Yellow may end up triggering xanthophobia, which is the fear of the color yellow. Yellow is a game available online that is essentially like the Impossible Quiz, but instead of answering questions, you have to find an incredibly weird way to make the whole screen yellow. The thing about these games is that they will typically only be scary to the fears that they trigger, and this game is no exception. If you have the fear of yellow, you're not watching this part, and if you are watching this part and you're scared of yellow, then I just need to say congratulations and I'm so sorry. This game literally revolves around the color yellow, and since you need to fill the screen with it, you're going to have a difficult time avoiding it. There isn't really much else to say. It's a game about yellow. And at 9, words with friends. If you suffer from Hippomonstrosis Quippedaliophobia, got it in one, that's right, then words with friends or even Scrabble is not the game for you. This game will trigger the fear of long words, which ironically is one of the longest words in the English dictionary. The game, as I'm sure you know, is about making long words to score points and beat your friends to a pulp because you've read the dictionary. While yes, you can make short words, ultimately, to win, you need to hit that sweet 5-syllable word on double points. If you do that with Hippomonstrosis Quippedaliophobia, then you're going to be so far in the lead you'll be James Holitzer from Jeopardy! If you didn't know, he's like the best player of all time, and it happened earlier this year. So far in the lead, not even someone who can spell anti-disestablishmentarianism will get you. Sorry to trigger you Hippomonstrosis Quippedaliophobes out there. Hippomonstrosis Quippedaliophobia. Yep. And at 8, Job Simulator. While this game is quite the fun or potentially boring VR game, those with ergophobia will be horrified to willingly subjecting yourself to work in a video game. Yes, ergophobia is the fear of work, and Job Simulator, come on, do I really need to explain? It's in the name of the game. No matter what context you do it in, even if you hire the criminal for laughs, it's still terrifying. And while most of these games are just hand and keyboard or a controller, this one is in virtual reality, forcing you to live the experience in the most immersive way possible. I don't know if having this fear would be like a blessing or a curse. Like, yeah, you can say you're terrified of working, and you are, but I'm not sure if there's much benefit to it. We need to work to survive. It's part of the reason why I'm here. I need food and I need to afford rent. But does this also constitute that you're afraid of housework? Or are you afraid of doing something with a purpose, like looking for something up for a specific reason? I'm not sure how these phobias work, to be honest, so if you do, please let me know in the comments because I'm really curious. And at 7, Pope Mobile. I love that this is an actual phobia, and if I had known about it sooner, I'm sure I'd say I have it because it is so interesting. Sometime in 2018, the Pope was going to visit Ireland, and the whole country was preparing. So one person thought it would be hilarious to make a game based around driving the Pope to Ireland as quickly as possible. Papaphobia is the fear of the Pope, and yes, you heard that right. While the Pope is never on screen, you know that he's in the car with you, and that can certainly give anyone a feeling of dread, knowing that you're carrying one of the most important people in the backseat of your Nissan Altima. But those with papaphobia will be scared to even come anywhere close to the car. The game is available in browsers, so if you want a Pope racing game like I know we all secretly do, search it up because it's great. And at 6, rinse and repeat. Do you enjoy taking a shower? Do you love bathing with others? Do you have a desire to watch other men in a virtual shower with almost no limitations? Well, maybe you should stop watching and go do that. You can do all of that with rinse and repeat, but for those with a blutophobia, you're in for one nasty treat. Hey, that rhymed. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. I can make it rhyme anytime. If you didn't understand that reference, we can't be friends. While bathing does indeed scare people, there is a way to help get over this fear. Exposure therapy and cognitive behavior therapy are both options to help you gradually expose yourself to the environment and help you become more comfortable with the situation. If you have any of these fears and are worried or embarrassed, there is no need to be. Talk to someone about it, maybe your doctor, and see what options you have if you want to get over it. Halfway through at number 5, Miyamata. Miyamata is a first-person survival game with slight horror elements. You play as an alchemist who is dying of a disease, so you try to invent a cure with a dangerous monster lurking in the woods. While most people will be scared of the monster, those with anthrophobia will be scared of the fact that this game is basically a flower picker simulator. Anthrophobia is the fear of flowers. Wow, this game is definitely full of them. With them being the main ingredient to using your elixirs for maintaining your life, if you play this game and avoid picking up the flowers, you're gonna lose. At least this game isn't virtual reality. Maybe you'll be able to disassociate the flowers with real life ones. Since they're virtual, don't smell and don't collect pollen causing your eyes to swell up, and when your sister throws a handful of them in your face right in the middle of allergy season, you have to go home because your eyes are watering and are now in intense pain because there was a bee in there. Okay, I'm going on a tangent. Just don't play the game if you're anthrophobic. Don't play any of these games if you have this fear. Like, unless you like a challenge. In at 4, rain. The fear is in the name. Umbrophobia is the fear of rain, and if you decide to load up this game because you think the title is ironic, you'll hate your life. In rain, it is always raining, so much so that the story revolves around a character who can see secret objects and people, but only while it's raining. So in the game, it is literally always raining because that's a crutch the developers stuck themselves with when coming up with this ridiculous plot. Does fear of rain actually count as fear of water? Or are people who are scared of water also scared of rain? Is this like a subcategory of phobia, or is it its own thing? I'm so confused. Well, if you decide to play this game, bring an umbrella. Or you can get a poncho, but that means that the rain is closer to your skin, so I'd suggest the umbrella. Ella, A. In at 3, Subnautica. Subnautica is an open world survival action adventure game by Unknown Worlds Entertainment that allows the player to explore the ocean on an alien planet. You can see where this is going. Thalassophobia is the fear of the deep, open water, or ocean, and is literally the antithesis to this game. This game does support VR, but unlike Job Simulator, you don't have to play in VR. Not only is this about the open, deep ocean, but it also contains monsters like Sea Treader Leviathan, who walks along the ocean floor, the Warper, that looks worse than Cthulhu, the Sea Dragon Leviathan, a huge underwater dragon, the Ghost Leviathan that should have stayed dead, and the Reaper Leviathan that is the horrific face spider of planet 4546b. In at 2, Close Your Eyes. This game is probably an optophobe's worst nightmare. The game Close Your Eyes may sound blissful to those afraid of opening their eyes, but what you'll realize after closing them is that there are secrets behind them. But to continue, you need to open your eyes. While this game is called Close Your Eyes, this is only a small portion of the game. With 3 different endings and an intense story, you'll actually have a good time playing this game if you don't have optophobia, the fear of opening your eyes. The game revolves around the opening and closing of your eyes, and this begs the question, do you also fear closing your eyes, since it means you'll have to open them? Or does this fear pass into a video game since they call it opening and closing your eyes? I have no clue. And finally, taking our number 1 spot, Try to Fall Asleep. Try to Fall Asleep is a game about John Heron, who suffers a terrible accident that causes him physical and mental harm. After healing from the damage, he must try and heal from his brain damage by sleeping, but his hallucinations try to scare him. Somnophobia is the fear of falling asleep, and while for this game you are awake and you repeatedly get scared awake, the game revolves around you trying to fall asleep. Every time you get scared awake, you just need to fall asleep again. Things can get rough for you both in the game and in real life if you have this phobia. So like I've said before, if you have any of these phobias, don't play these games. If you want to use them as a coping mechanism, or if you think that they'll help you, then go for it. But when a game is literally trying to scare you like this one, it is probably not the best idea to add a phobia to the mix, hence why it's at number 1.
Number 10, macrophobia. Because the world of Animal Crossing syncs up with real world time, there are instances in the game where you have to wait for things to progress. Sometimes you have to wait a day or longer for changes in the game to come about, especially in New Horizons where being on an island is cited as the reason for delay. After all, building materials or anything else you need to accomplish construction projects would in theory need to all be flown in before the assembly process could even begin. Macrophobia is the fear of long waits, and this phobia is one that could be triggered by delays in the game. If this is a fear that bothers you, you may find the only way possible to play Animal Crossing is by relying on time travel to accomplish tasks in the game much more quickly, avoiding any wait. Number 9, nyctophobia. Those who are afraid of the dark might find playing Animal Crossing at night impossible and may need to surround their home in the game with tons of illuminating items. Without any lights purchased or placed in your home, it will be permanently dim lit and dark in there, especially in some of the earlier Animal Crossing games where your home may not have any windows. At night, your town or island will also get dark to reflect the time of day, and while you can still see, and on some nights will even have stars visible, those with a severe fear of the dark may still find the nighttime too unsettling a time to play, and may only find themselves able to play the game during the day, for fear of what could be lurking in the shadows of the nighttime darkness. Number 8, graphophobia. Graphophobia is the fear of writing, or of handwriting. As Animal Crossing is a video game, there isn't much opportunity to receive or send handwritten materials. However, you can type in the game, read, and post or send community messages or letters. The idea of writing these or reading or receiving them may trigger the fear of graphophobia in players. This doesn't take away a huge element of the gameplay, but receiving mail is how you receive some online store orders for clothing and furniture in the game. So that might be problematic. Might make you afraid of opening your mailbox a little. Number 7, Duranophobia. Messages received in bottles and gifts shot down from the sky may also trigger those who have this phobia. Geronophobia is the fear of opening presents, and receiving and acquiring presents is part of the world of Animal Crossing. Usually, what one fears is that the contents of the gift will be something dangerous or unpleasant. The act of opening the present and the suspense that comes along with it may be felt to be so severe that the player may find themselves tossing out presents, as they are unable to face the idea of opening any that they find or receive. Not everyone likes surprises, even if it's nicely wrapped. Number 6, hylophobia. Pocket Camp and many of the other Animal Crossing titles could trigger this fear. In Pocket Camp, you have your own campsite and tent, and are implied to be out camping. For those who fear forests, this could be a big problem. Most people with hylophobia also have a fear of being attacked out in the wilderness, and the idea that you are out in the middle of nowhere in Pocket Camp might be too much for some players to take. Alternatively, just the trees that surround you in other Animal Crossing titles on your island or in your town might be enough to make those with hylophobia feel that their character is somewhat in a forest, despite the fact that the area around them is actually somewhat populated. Like, you have neighbors and stuff. You're not out in the middle of nowhere, but still a lot of trees. Number 5, fructophobia. Sounds like it could be some kind of weird cereal. Fructophobia, the fruit cereal that bites back. Get it? Because it's like a fear, so it's gotta be scary fruit, right? Fructophobia is the fear of fruit, which usually revolves around the fear of fruit being infested with bugs and the fear of eating seeds. People usually fear eating seeds because they're concerned that the seeds will somehow germinate in their stomach and grow inside them. Of course, this is not possible. Still, people fear what they fear. The idea of eating fruit to increase your strength in the game could concern those with the fear of consuming seeds. And the fear of infested fruit could be strengthened by the fact that bugs sometimes fall out of trees or land on them. Number 4, chronophobia. Chronophobia is the fear of time, and players with this fear may find it hard to play video games at all, let alone Animal Crossing. Time is kind of a concept in a lot of video games. The passing of time is what troubles those suffering from chronophobia the most, and video games can also make time feel as though it may be flying by, which could be problematic. In Animal Crossing, the passing of time also syncs up with our own, only making those with this fear more aware of it. Although you can time travel in order to detach the feeling of the game from the real world passage of time, this likely won't do much to help those who suffer from this phobia, as it will still leave players looking at the clock and date, which may add to their anxiety. Number 3, botanophobia. Botanophobia is the fear of plants. This fear is often considered irrational as, plants don't usually do much in the way of causing harm to humans, so there's not much reason to be scared of them. In fact, without trees and plants on the planet's surface, we would not be able to live. Plants both provide a source of food for us and other creatures, and help to clean our air, taking in CO2, and in return giving us oxygen. Sweet, sweet oxygen, which then we breathe in. But just because a fear seems irrational doesn't mean that it still can't manifest. So, what are people afraid of when it comes to plants? Usually that the plants will come to life and eat you, or that the plants will overgrow and overtake their victims, suffocating them. Weeding is a big part of Animal Crossing, as your island will usually end up slowly being covered in weeds if you leave the game for too long, or choose to simply not pull up all the weeds that have appeared. The idea of weeds covering your town or island could indeed trigger this fear within you. That, or the fact that planting trees and caring for flowers is a regular part of the everyday world in Animal Crossing. You might have to make sure your island has no trees or no anything, but then you won't be able to craft anything. Number 2, apiphobia. For those who are afraid of insects that fly, swarm, and sting, like bees and wasps, Animal Crossing might prove to be a little too scary. These insects have been known to be one of the few antagonizing things in the game. Originally, when shaking trees looking for rewards like bells, it was a bee's nest that could fall out and cause the player to run in fear. If the bees that flew out of the nest at you caught you, they would sting you and your eye would appear all swollen for some time, or until you took some medicine. This has since been changed in the game, and if you are playing New Horizons, you'll likely notice that it's not bees that fall out of the tree, but wasps that end up falling out of the tree and will swarm you. If you're afraid of getting stung, you can always keep your net at the ready, as it is possible to actually catch the wasps before they can sting you. However, those who suffer from severe apiphobia will likely find themselves unable to do so, as they may instead find themselves paralyzed with fear, or find themselves hesitant to shake trees to begin with, preferring simply to not put themselves at risk. And I can't blame them. Number 1, aquaphobia. On part 1 of this list, we talked about another similar fear to this one, thalassophobia, the fear of oceans, deep bodies of water, waves, sea creatures, and even potentially sea monsters, and how this relates to the world of Animal Crossing, particularly the newest installment, New Horizons, because you're on an island. But there are lots of other sources of water in the games, which is why today we are broadening that fear to aquaphobia, the fear of water in general. This isn't just the fear of deep water. This fear could be triggered by any of the little rivers or creeks that you fish in, or by the sight of a waterfall. In fact, even the idea of water within an aquarium or your watering can could freak you out. Where does all the water miraculously come from in your watering can, by the way? Does it just poof because it's empty? How come you can never seem to need to refill it? Pascal himself in Pocket Camp can be attracted to your campsite when you build his kiddie pool in the game. When he stops by, he can be seen floating around in the inflatable pool, which also might be enough to terrify you if you develop this fear of water. Which is sad, because Pascal's super cute. Number 10, anchrophobia. Weather changes from day to day in Animal Crossing. It can be sunny, rainy, or even windy. Different weather conditions and seasons will affect the bug and fish population, among other things. But a windy day could also trigger someone suffering from anchrophobia, or anemophobia, which is a fear of wind, especially as wind sounds are used as a signal that an air current is blowing a package overhead, which you can then shoot down out of the sky with your slingshot. Those who have a fear of wind, however, might not find the idea of random packages blowing by as fun as was originally intended. Number 9, agoraphobia. As Animal Crossing mostly involves open spaces with no viable way to escape your surroundings, it's unsurprising that people who suffer from agoraphobia might find the game more anxiety-inducing than they'd hope. Those with a fear of unsafe environments could either find themselves soothed by the game, using it as a safe escape, being a virtual world where nothing can harm you as the player directly, or could find their fears triggered even more by a world like Animal Crossing, where you don't always know what will happen, and where you have very few ways to escape your little slice of paradise. Number 8, thalassophobia. This one especially applies to New Horizons. Thalassophobia is a fear of the sea. If you are an Adventure Time fan, this was something you may have been introduced to through one of the main characters, Finn the Human, who has an intense fear of the ocean. This fear can also apply to deep bodies of water, sea creatures, and even the fear of waves or potential unknown sea monsters. New Horizons all takes place on islands, and even in the DSAH game Wild World, you have a beach in your town. The idea of having unknown shadows as well to represent fish might make players more frightened of what could be lurking in the depths of these waters. Is it a fish or is it a monster? Or is it just trash? Number 7, claustrophobia. While most of the game is played in wide open spaces, there are some instances where you could be left feeling stuck, if only momentarily. But sometimes a moment is all one needs to have a fear triggered. Claustrophobia is the fear of having no escape, being stuck often in a small, enclosed space. Falling into holes created by pitfall seeds leaves the player momentarily trapped, while their character looks startled and wiggles furiously to try to escape. Eventually, you will get free from the hole you are trapped in, but for those with severe claustrophobia, this might prevent them wanting to continue, especially as it's possible sometimes to get distracted in the game, running or falling into a hole that wasn't spotted initially. Try to look where you're going when you're running. Number 6, chromatophobia. The idea of money as a necessity also extends to the Animal Crossing world. Well, I guess you don't really need to have money, but almost every activity you perform in the game revolves around the idea of receiving, spending, or managing your bells, which is the name of the in-game currency. Well, one of the currencies anyways in New Horizons. In New Horizons, there are actually quite a few different forms of currency for you to use in exchange for goods or services. Buying, exchanging, and collecting these currencies adds more opportunity for players suffering from chromatophobia to be triggered. Chromatophobia is the fear of money, including amassing it, spending it, and managing or budgeting with it, all of which the game Animal Crossing deals with. And let's not forget about what often feels like your never-ending house debt in the game. Number 5, Autophobia. Autophobia is a term sometimes used to define the fear of being alone or isolated, although there are many different words to describe that fear. In Animal Crossing, of course, you will find yourself surrounded by friends and neighbors, so you would think this fear would be impossible to be triggered. But the fear often extends to being bigger than just the fear of physically being lonely. It can also come hand in hand with a feeling of worthlessness. In other words, a person might fear being alone, which might also manifest in such a way that they feel worry or feel no one likes or accepts them. They may not even believe they are worthy of love or friendship. As such, the sometimes bizarre social interactions in the game might be overanalyzed by a player and lead them to feel like no one likes them and they are all alone, which is both sad and terrifying. Feeling like you are being rejected or judged by characters in a video game, not even just in your life, would be pretty intense. Number 4, Phobia. For those who are triggered by cockroaches, Animal Crossing might not be the game for you. Not only are there multiple types of cockroaches in the game for you to uncover, eek, and catch, but often if you've had a long break in between sessions, your house can become infested with them. You must then run around trying to catch or kill them by stepping on them. Instead of running towards them, however, those suffering from a fear of the insects may find themselves running away in terror and find it difficult to even return to or live in their home in the game thereafter. Number 3, Arachnophobia. With Spider Island being a potential thing in the world of Animal Crossing New Horizons, it's unsurprising that players who have a fear of spiders might find the gameplay in Animal Crossing triggering. However, you can of course choose to not pursue this route and simply not make a Spider Island, but the fearsome creepy crawlies in the game will still exist, and it is still possible that they will come after you, chasing you, and if they catch you, knocking you out. So while you can become a billionaire through tarantula and scorpion farming, those that are afraid of arachnids might find themselves wishing they were instead armed with bug repellent as opposed to a net. Number 2, Zoophobia. Zoophobia is, you likely guessed it, the fear of animals. Playing a game like Animal Crossing could definitely trigger this fear, as other than the players, every other character and creature in the game is pretty much an animal. Some animals talk and are anthropomorphic, which actually might ease this fear for some, but those who suffer from both zoophobia and anthropomorphophobia will just be even more triggered. Anthropomorphophobia is the fear of non-human objects or creatures that exhibit human characteristics or traits, which gyroids themselves in the game may also trigger. Wow, wow, wow. Number 1, Atelophobia. Atelophobia is a fear that the game Animal Crossing can reinforce in people or even instill in those who don't already have it to begin with. Atelophobia is a fear of imperfection or a fear of things going wrong. Nothing can really, of course, go super wrong in the pleasant world of Animal Crossing, but you will likely have an idea of what you want to happen in order for things to go super right for you. Animal Crossing is somewhat a sandbox game, encouraging players to curate and build their own perfect towns or islands, but it is possible to make mistakes and get things wrong during the process, or to have certain aspects which are harder to control interfere with your master plan. For players who value perfection, this can lead to a paralyzing fear about messing up, making a mistake, or not having everything go the way you want.